question. How many half-used beauty products are currently living in your bathroom drawer? Too many, right? That's where U Beauty comes in. We test everything from supermarket finds to luxury splurges and tell you what's worth it. U Beauty, saving your skin and your wallet. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Australian women, welcome to your full body health check. I'm Claire Murphy.
And I'm Dr. Mariam.
Now, we are going to attempt to answer a bunch of questions about perimenopause and menopause today. So we'll find out when it might be too late to start HRT, or whether that's even a thing, MHT, if that's what you're calling it, like Dr. Mariam. We're going to find out whether some of the symptoms you're experiencing could actually be perimenopause or other things, how to manage birth control during this time, because you technically can still make babies even if you do not want to. So heaps of questions coming in.
I've learnt so much from these questions.
Because you're a few years away from peri yet, right?
I'm a few years from perimenopause. I'm pregnant, so I'm going through my own hormonal shifts,
yes.
Which is also not fun. But no, I've learnt so much from this. So this is really going to prepare me for the transition that is to come.
Yeah, so even if you're not in your 40s, this is good stuff to arm yourself with to know what might be coming your way. So today we wanted to give some perspective on menopause because, let's be honest, Western culture doesn't always handle this part of a woman's life very well. Many women who went before us have suffered in silence or are told now they're essentially just invisible because their ability to procreate has come to an end. Well, guess what? Humans are not the only species on the planet that goes through menopause.
Oh, interesting.
Along with us ladies, several toothed whales.
Bloody always the whales.
It's always the whales. Orcas, killer whales, short-finned pilot whales, beluga whales, and the magical unicorns of the sea, narwhals.
Oh, I love them.
Also go through menopause. Now, in these animal communities of gorgeous whales, do you think grandma whale is told, now that you've reached this time in your life, you're a dried up old husk of your former self, no longer needed in your community simply because you can no longer reproduce? I mean, neither of us speak whale unless you do, and I've just not checked. But we have to assume through the actions of whales rather than words. No, the grandmother effect makes these older females in whale communities so much more important because they provide care, they provide guidance, resources to their younger relatives as well. They also become leaders and the keepers of wisdom. And I've also been reading a lot about how menopause is handled in different cultures around the world. So Japanese culture, for example, they view women past their reproductive years as being in this time of renewal and regeneration. The Japanese word for menopause, konenki, which translates to renewal year or season of energy,
wow,
which
I love
is
that.
Really amazing. Their more positive outlook on menopause could also be tied into the fact that Japanese women in general tend to suffer their menopausal symptoms less than we see in other communities. That could also be due to their diet. So Japanese diet is high in soy-based products, but it could also be the cultural connection that menopausal women have with their communities. They're not felt like they're past their due-by date. They're not ousted by anything. So there's this real emphasis on accepting these changes rather than trying to hide them, which may make it a little bit easier when you're going through that transition. And there's also this real respect in Japanese communities for the elderly. And I'm not saying that women who are currently perimenopausal are elderly because, like, it happens in your 40s.
Yeah.
But it is that acceptance, I think, that makes it an easier thing to go through. Also, Indigenous cultures around the globe see this phase of life as a type of leveling up almost, like you're coming into your superhero years, which I think is glorious. So Canadian Cree women, for example, see it as a way that they're able to access their shamanic and healing powers because they're no longer releasing their blood, they're retaining that and they can use that as part of their power. Maori communities in Aotearoa in New Zealand, menopausal women tend to become community leaders around this age. That comes with power and status. So aunties, besties, like whatever your role is, keep that in mind when you are going through this transition stage and you're feeling like you're fading away into insignificance. You are actually coming into your power. at this point in your life. Menopause can be pretty tough. Symptoms can be really rough. There are also women who experience no symptoms at all. Am I jealous of you? Yes, I am. But also it is a very individual experience. It can be a 10-year journey, but it is a transition that then on the other side puts us in a place of leadership and strength, which is something I think we really need to keep in mind when we are battling this.
That was like a really refreshing and powerful reframing of menopause. I really love that perspective. We often get so caught up in the symptoms of menopause that we often forget the context. In medicine, yes, we talk about all those hormonal shifts, the hot flushes, the sleep deprivation, but we rarely zoom out to see the cultural lens through which we're experiencing it. And I think that's where the issue lies. In many Western cultures, menopause has been medicalized or marginalized, and it's seen as the ending of youth and fertility and beauty rather than transition, like you explained, into this new and equally vital phase of life. And that's not biology speaking, but when we look at other cultures or even orcas, we see menopause isn't a disappearing act, it's a coming into power, and I love that. And in medicine, we call this the grandmother hypothesis. Older post-reproductive women help their communities thrive with knowledge, support and care. It's evolution's vote of confidence. So from a GP perspective, I do want females to feel empowered, not just philosophically, but practically as well. This means access to treatment when needed, education about what's happening with your body, and demand more from a health system that's underserved you.
Yep.
Menopause isn't something to just get through. It's something to step into with wisdom, strength, and ideally a bit more cultural respect than we've been handed so far. So, yes, you're not invisible. Girl, you're just getting started.
100%. And let me tell you, you will learn stuff about yourself that you didn't realize.
Yeah.
You are stronger than you think.
Make yourself a priority.
Yep, you're not invisible. Get yourself in the spotlight. All right, next we are going to get into your peri and menopause questions, from whether the contraceptive pill works the same as HRT or MHT. This is a really important one, the difference between brain fog and dementia.
Hello, friends. It's Holly Wainwright jumping into your ears, not literally, that would be weird, to tell you about the next season of Mid and how it's all about you. You see, over the last 5 seasons, we've talked about everything on Mid, from marriage and divorce to hormones and fashion and sex and grief, life, right? And we've had so much feedback from you about your own messy middles that we have decided to make a season all about that, about you and the challenges that you're facing. The next season of Mid is all about dilemmas and wisdom and sharing both those things. And I am phoning in my friends to help. Hopefully, we're going to sort it out. And me and my more qualified mates, we are really going there. Mid, Conversations for Gen X Women Who Are Anything But, is back in your ears with your questions on Tuesday, July 15th.
Mariam, it is time to answer some questions about our perimenopausal bodies.
Let's do it.
They do some fun, changey things around this time. Well, let's start off with question 1 from our Well community. This one came in via the waiting room. So, look, a lot of people want to know when it's too late or even too early to start MHT, because there's actually quite a lot of women in a generation who missed out on early MHT because of that study, where we now understand it a hell of a lot better. This person is asking, because they're 58, she wants to know, is it too late? She's postmenopausal but has been hearing good things about how it can help women her age.
This one comes up all the time. Such a great question, especially from women who feel like they may have missed the boat to start MHT. A big part of that, unfortunately, is the big WHI study from the early 2000s. Media ran with it, fear skyrocketed, and an entire generation was scared off treatment. But here's the truth. Science has moved on. We now know the study had serious limitations, like including females who were mostly over the age of 60, many of whom had already had higher risk of underlying chronic illness. So we've had more recent high-quality research. So at 58, my friend, not too late. If you're post-menopausal and still dealing with symptoms, or you're just curious about long-term benefits, it's worth a conversation with your doctor. Let's tailor the approach to your body, your symptoms and your goals, not outdated fear or one-size-fits-all.
Amen, sister. All right, our next question. Does taking the pill mask symptoms of perimenopause, or will I still experience some symptoms? So obviously there is a lot of people who are using progesterone IUDs now that is being used as a form of MHT. Will you still experience symptoms if you're using those?
So if you're on the combined oral contraceptive pill, so that's estrogen and progesterone, it can smooth out the hormone fluctuations we see in the perimenopause space. So you think of mood swings, hot flushes, heavy or irregular periods, which is a common one. So for some females, the pill can act like this hormonal noise canceller, but it doesn't switch off that transition altogether. So some symptoms may still break through, especially things like sleep disturbances, fatigue, low libido or mood changes, particularly in your late 40s when those hormone levels really start to dip. And because the pill gives you that regular withdrawal bleed, it can also mask the fact that your natural cycles are changing, which can make it trickier to kind of know when that final menstrual period or menopause is approaching.
Because a lot of my friends haven't had a period for years.
Yeah.
They've been skipping the sugar pills.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so you
they
don't
wouldn't
know. And that's where keeping a symptom diary is going to be your best friend. As we get older, especially past the age of 50, we usually recommend coming off the combined oral contraceptive pill because the estrogen component in it can slightly increase the risk of blood clots, stroke and cardiovascular issues, particularly in females that have underlying health issues. At that stage, the risks start to outweigh the benefits for the combined oral contraceptive pill. So what's the alternative? Enter the progesterone IUD. It's a fantastic option for managing heavy bleeding and it gives reliable contraception.
But as always, general advice because not everyone gets along with the progesterone IUD either.
Exactly. So if you're wondering what works best for you, the pill, the IUD, MHT, or none of the above, have a chat with your GP. We'll look at your symptoms, your age, your goals and risks and help tailor the right plan for what is needed for your next stage of life.
Amazing. We have so many options. This next lot of questions is going to be answered by Gene House Centre for Women's Health endocrinologist, Dr. Sonia Davison. Our first question, Sonia, says, I'm getting hot flushes at 35. Could this be perimenopause already?
Well, it is tricky because you could possibly be menopausal at 45, and for some women, perimenopause can go up to 11 years. So while it's not likely based on age, and I suspect if her flushes and sweats are happening when her estrogen's diving down before the period, then yes, it is possible. It's not probable. You just need to see someone very canny, a good women's health GP, and get some good advice there. I know some will dismiss women like that, but if you consider she might be menopausal, which is natural at 45, there's a thing I call shitty late 30s hormones.
Is that its technical term? Yes.
It's just a Sonia term. Please don't quote me. And there's no evidence behind it. But I think in the workup before perimenopause, I think there's a bit of a reset between the hypothalamus and the pituitary. I do think those changes start from the mid to late 30s, and then perimenopause typically follows in the mid to late 40s, but it can be even early 40s.
The next question from the Well community is, I'm in my mid-40s and starting to really lose my hair. It's horrible. The anxiety it causes is debilitating. Is this due to my hormones?
It may be. And again, about that relative change in the estrogen diving down and the testosterone only diving a little. Genetics is very important here, so it's important to see what mum did and other family members. 40s is associated with a lot of heavy bleeding in some women, and I'd put money on the fact that she would be iron deficient. No promises, of course. Stress can cause hair loss. There's a beautiful information sheet called patterned hair loss, and that just means scalp hair loss at Better Health Channel. And, of course, a dermatologist is probably the best one to see for advice. Hormones may be part of it, though.
The next question is about pregnancy. So this person has asked, can you get pregnant when you have perimenopause symptoms? If yes, how hard is it? Is fertility compromised?
Well, I've got the story of the 49-year-old lady. We were about to start hormone therapy and she wasn't ever ready to push the pram, but she'd wanted to and she'd never got pregnant. She conceived beautiful Alice, who's now 6 or 7, and she was a 49-year-old mum. So because the pituitary is trying ever so hard to get an egg to develop, yes, a third of those cycles can be ovulatory with an egg, and yes, pregnancy can happen. So just be very wary of contraception if you do not need to push a pram in your 40s.
Our next question and final question for you, Sonia, is how do I know if I have peri-related brain fog or if there's something more serious going on? Is there anything I can do to help? I think this is something a lot of people worry about because when brain fog hits, you're like, is this a mental health issue? Am I getting dementia? Like, it can be really scary.
It's even more scary if there's a family history, mum, grandmothers, and it is terrifying. I have gone into rooms and I don't know why I'm in there. I have lost my keys. I've lost my phone. I haven't lost a child, touch wood, that's a very good one, but I have lost pens, notes, whatever. This is normal. So brain fog, those cognitive changes, those mood changes are normal. As we're busy caring for others, working, getting through life, but also with those crazy hormones of perimenopause and also at menopause. The good news is at menopause with the steady low estrogen, those really crazy cognitive symptoms really just bottom out a bit. So the brain fog, I would be investigating with some iron studies, with a thyroid. I do a general tune-up, make sure the blood glucose is fine, make sure the blood pressure is good. Talk to a kind GP, get sorted out, get investigated, but it might not be having hormone levels done.
Big thank you to Dr. Davison for answering those questions for us. This next one is for you, Mariam.
Let's do it.
What is the ideal level of estradiol I should have in my system when I'm on MHT? If I get a blood test, what should the level be?
Short answer is we don't treat the number. We treat the woman. So when you're using...
Because we don't know what that level should be, is what you're saying.
So
yeah?
when you're using MHT, especially the transdermal estrogen, like the patches or gel, the levels in your blood can vary widely. So even from hour to hour, it makes them pretty unreliable for guiding treatment in most cases.
Like if you have your blood test at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday, it might be completely different levels by 3 p.m. on a Wednesday.
Yes, so there's no universally agreed target levels for something like thyroid hormones, for instance. Labs generally have a reference range, but they're often based on premenopausal physiology, not on what is needed to control symptoms or protect bone and heart health in perimenopause and menopause. So symptoms beat numbers every time. So if you're sleeping better, you're no longer overheating, and your mood's steadier, you're probably on the right dose. So don't stress about hitting that perfect number.
Okay. And I know some of us are competitive and we like to get our test back and be like, I am right smack bang in the middle of normal here, everybody.
But I feel like shit.
But I feel like absolute dumpster fire. Like it does not matter in this case. So don't worry too much about that. All right. Up next, we're talking about peri-anxiety, which is a very real thing, whether crazy persistent headaches could be linked to MHT use. And this is one I asked on behalf of myself and a lot of people that I know, how to actually use the estrogen gel correctly.
Parenting podcasts can be a bit earnest. Parenting Out Loud is not that podcast.
This person who I may not agree with politically is trying to talk about integrating children, not just into his professional life, but into public life.
I have referred to myself as one and done. That article did make me rethink the term.
It took about 11 seconds for this to go viral.
Oh God, is this the ejaculate one? That is deranged and I love it.
Parenting changes the way you see everything. Parenting Out Loud takes the big conversations of the moment and puts them through that filter.
Because if parents are thinking about it, we're talking about it.
Parenting Out Loud. Listen weekly wherever you get your podcasts.
We're covering all the questions you've been sending through about perimenopause and menopause today. If you do have a question about anything health related, so it does not have to be about perimenopause and about anything you're concerned about, we have got tons of ways that you can get your questions to us, and we really, really love reading them. I've been having great chats with people in the DMs, Mariam. So as I mentioned, you can DM us. So we're on Insta, TikTok. You can also send us an email, well@mamamia.com.au, or there's this thing called the waiting room where a lot of these questions come from because you can remain anonymous, and there is a link to that in our show notes if you are keen to share. Mariam, this one's for you.
Okay.
I get anxious a lot. This is not me saying this is someone sending in a question. I get anxious a lot since finishing menopause. I do take medication, but it doesn't go away completely. Every time there's a change in my routine or life, I feel I won't cope. Is this normal?
Look, you're not alone in feeling this, and yes, it can be a normal part of the postmenopausal experience, but it's something definitely worth unpacking with a doctor. After menopause, our levels of estrogen and progesterone, they dip significantly, and both of these hormones have a massive role in modulating our mood and the stress response.
We found this out when we did our segment on mind.
Yeah.
Like, your hormones are playing a huge role in your mental health.
Yeah, so it's not surprising that many women report this lingering sense of anxiety and vulnerability, or even a heightened response to life changes, even if they're on medication. So that said, we don't want to put everything down to menopause. So ongoing or worsening anxiety could signal something more like a generalized anxiety disorder or other mental health conditions, or it could be a sign of an underlying medical condition, for instance, like thyroid dysfunction, all which deserve proper assessment. So you're already taking medication, which is great, but if it's not helping completely, it may be time for a review, and your GP is a great place to start. Your GP will discuss things like dose, or it's still the best fit for you, if hormone therapy might help. Some women find this makes a difference post-menopause. Whether a referral for psychological treatment like CBT might be helpful, and ruling out other health issues like we'd mentioned that could be contributing to how you're feeling. So yes, feeling emotionally wobbly post-menopause isn't unusual, but you don't have to just put up with it. Book that GP check-in. Let's make sure we're not missing anything and get you feeling more confident and support this phase as you're going through it.
Also, being emotionally wobbly during this experience is huge.
Yeah.
I'm not an anxious person. I hadn't suffered anxiety, but when perimenopause hit, I was getting premenstrual anxiety, which I'd never had before. Thank you for adding yet another symptom to my list of checkboxes for perimenopause. This next lot of questions are being answered by Clinical Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Sydney, Professor Rodney Baber. Starting with one that involves something a lot of women are asking about. So my first question comes from the Well community, and she asks, can the progesterone in HRT be making my ADHD symptoms worse?
If it's natural progesterone, it should not be making ADHD worse. The problem with synthetic progestins is they can bind to other hormone receptors as well as progesterone receptors, and therefore could cause an effect.
This next one is something that we're suggesting this person go and speak to their GP about because it's very individualised. But she has headaches and cluster migraines that have been increasing in frequency and intensity 1.5 to every 2 weeks. She's on the estrogen gel and takes a progesterone tablet. She's 52. She's wondering if the way that she doses those might change her headache situation. So she's asking, should I use the gel every second day or use one pump daily across both arms instead of 2? Would that make a difference? Or is there any other advice to deal with headaches and using MHT?
Claire, she certainly should talk to her GP. This is because headaches, particularly migraine headaches, and particularly if you're getting clusters or auras, are very important. So generally speaking, if you have migraines, the key to it is to get the hormone levels stable. So if she's using a gel, then it really doesn't matter how she applies it as long as it's being done regularly every day. It'll take about 3 days from your time you start to get stable hormone levels. And if you are still getting headaches, then you definitely need to go back to your doctor. Progesterone, the same. So by and large with hormones, we would say steady dose of both estrogen and progesterone, transdermal, not oral. Progesterone can be oral, of course, that's not a problem. And then if you do get clusters or if you get auras, then you need to go back to your GP to talk about it. The one thing I will say is in some circumstances, higher doses are needed. Don't do that on your own at home. Go and talk to your doctor.
Sound advice. All right, next question from the community. I'm osteopenic according to a bone density scan. Can I improve my old lady bones without being on MHT? She said it made my periods return after 3 years of not having any once she started.
Well, you can. The short answer is adequate calcium in your diet, adequate vitamin D, and regular weight-bearing exercise. Maintain your bones. There's not much evidence that it will improve bone density much at all. But also, I don't blame you for stopping your hormones if you're suddenly having periods again. But that's certainly worth, again, talking to your doctor about, because they should be able to sort that out. If your issue is just the periods, that should be sorted. If your issue is you don't really want to take hormones, then exercise, calcium, vitamin D. And remember, there are some other medications which are not usually used for osteopenia, just for osteoporosis.
Can I ask another question about the gel? And this is something my friends and I have been discussing a fair bit, is like, what's the best way to use it? Because you're suggested to put it either on your upper arm or your inner thigh. And then there's a lot of confusion about whether you put it on both arms at the same time, both inner thighs at the same time. Do you put it in the same spot every time, or do you change it up? How do we use it so that it absorbs the best and we get the most out of it?
Well, let me talk about patches first. They're pretty simple. You should put them on the lower part of the body, the buttocks, the thigh, even on your tummy if you want to, and it'll be reliably absorbed. If you're using gel, there are two different gels in Australia. One is an alcohol-based gel, which is designed to be applied, not rubbed, to a large part of the body. And usually that will be the arms because it's easier. And it should be rubbed from the shoulder to the wrist and just applied. Because it's alcohol-based, it'll be absorbed very quickly and it doesn't leave any sediment or greasiness or whatever. If you have 2 pumps, then yes, put one on each arm. If you use 3 pumps, put one on both arms and one on one leg, and similarly for 4 pumps. If you're using the other gel, it's a different type of gel. Once it's been absorbed, which takes a few minutes, there will be no greasy residue either, but it should be applied over an area about the size of 2 palms of the hand, no more. Because if you rub it over a big area, it won't be absorbed as well.
Final question for you today, Rodney, is about dosing. She asks, can I ask for my dose of HRT to be increased if my symptoms start to creep back in? I heard that some of us don't absorb the gel as well as others.
It's a good question. And yes, the answer is you can. Doctors correctly would be reluctant to increase the dose beyond the high levels that are recommended by the TGA, the government, which is based on science. So we know that 95% of women will have adequate relief of their symptoms using the doses which we recommend. But your listener is also correct. Not everybody absorbs transdermal hormones the same way. And so when worst comes to worst in that situation, what we recommend is that you actually have a blood test to see what your estrogen level is. And if it's still not particularly high and not at a level beyond which we would be frightened or cautious about treating, it can be increased. But you might have to increase the progesterone as well.
Thank you to Professor Baber for answering all of those.
Best.
He's so lovely.
Oh, God, he's just a wealth of knowledge.
We are very lucky to have access to the experts that we do here on Well. Some of the people we're speaking to, and I can't stress this enough, are absolute leaders in their field.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, we are
so
very
grateful. Yeah.
All right, Mariam. Birth control again,
yes,
coming up in
it.
discussion when it comes to this time in life. How do I manage birth control at the same time as using HRT? Aren't they the same hormones? Does it work the same?
Great question, and one that confuses a lot of people. So MHT and birth control both contain estrogen and progesterone, but they serve very different purposes, and MHT does not prevent pregnancy, so it is not used as contraception. We use much lower doses than the contraceptive pill. Contraceptive pills, especially the combined oral contraceptive pills, they have higher doses and they're designed to suppress ovulation, and that's what gives you reliable pregnancy protection. So if you're perimenopausal and you're still ovulating, so you're still getting periods, even if they're irregular, MHT will not stop you getting pregnant. And yes, you can still fall pregnant in the perimenopause space. It has
even
happened.
If you think your ovaries are these little dried up dust bunnies who are puffing out smoke, every now and then your brain will kick out and decide that all the hormones are going into making an egg this cycle, and Bob's your uncle. If your husband or partner or donor has sperms that still work, then it can still happen.
So how do you manage both if you're in this space? If you're under the age of 50 and you're still getting periods, you'll generally need effective contraception until you hit menopause. So we've got a rule. It's 12 months after your final period. You'll need contraception if you're 50 or older, or 2 years.
So even after you've hit actual menopause?
Yep. So 12 months after your last menstrual period if you're over the age of 50. And if you're under the age of 50, you will need contraception for 2 years after your final menstrual period. So options are progesterone-only pill, the progesterone IUD, the contraceptive implant. These can double as contraception and as part of your MHT regimen as discussed with your doctor.
Okay.
The combined pill sometimes is used in the perimenopause space for symptom control and contraception, but we usually avoid this after the age of 50 due to increased risk of blood clots and stroke. If we do use it in the perimenopause space, we generally use the lowest dose possible. If you've had a progesterone IUD inserted as contraception, it can also act as the progesterone part of your MHT for up to 5 years. So that's a win-win. Bottom line, MHT, it's not birth control, but it's worth having a chat to your GP about the simplest way to manage both your contraception and your menopausal symptoms together. So yes, same hormones, just different job descriptions. Like think of coffee and energy drinks. Both give you a kick, but they're not the same thing.
They are not the same thing. That is so very true. All right, next one for you, Mariam.
Yep.
How is HRT prescribed? So this person has said, I keep seeing different recommendations of progesterone, 14 days on, 14 days off, and others have progesterone the whole cycle. Someone told me you don't get the two things separate either, that when they're prescribed, they come in a pack together, the estrogen and the progesterone, so you use both. Like, what is happening here?
All right, let's unpack it. So MHT usually involves two hormones. That's estrogen, which is the main player for symptom relief, and the progesterone component, and that's there to protect the lining of the uterus if you still have one. So
the estrogen is the patch or the gel?
The estrogen is the patch or the gel.
The progesterone is a pill, yes?
Progesterone is the pill if that's the way you've decided to have the progesterone component.
For some people,
it could be the IUD or the implant. Now, the way progesterone is prescribed depends on where you're at in your perimenopause and menopause journey. So if you're still in the perimenopause space, so your periods are still happening, they're just a bit erratic, you will be on a cyclical regimen. So that's where you take progesterone for 12 to 14 days of each month alongside daily estrogen. So that's the topical, either the transdermal patch or the gel. And that mimics your natural hormone cycle and causes a withdrawal bleed, a bit like a light period. When you're postmenopausal, so that's 12 months since your last menstrual period, your final menstrual period, we often move to a continuous combined MHT regimen. That means you take both estrogen and progesterone every day, and that avoids the bleeding altogether and keeps things simple and steady. As for how it's delivered, estrogen can come as a patch, it can come as a gel, or it can come as a tablet for some people. The progesterone component can come as a tablet, which we've mentioned. You can have it through your IUD, or you can have it through an implant as well. And yes, some products come pre-packaged in a combined form, which is just easier to use.
So that means you get like the gel and the pills in a pack together kind of vibe,
you get the two separate components, but it's in the pack. So you get the progesterone capsules. And if you're in that perimenopause space, it's for 12 to 14 days. Postmenopausal, it's that continuous. So estrogen and progesterone daily. And they just come together as two separate components in a pack. So if you're unsure about it or that leaflet is confusing, some of them are, have a chat with your doctor and we'll break it down for you.
So many questions, and there were still so many that came through that we don't have time to get to. But make sure you subscribe to our Well newsletter because we do answer some of the questions in there as well. Thank you, everybody, for sending them in. Look, just a reminder again, MHT isn't going to be right for everyone. The risks and benefits do depend on your age, on your health, and your personal circumstances. So make sure you do have a chat with your doctor to work out what is best for you. So next week, you'll be getting not one, but 2 episodes of Well. We're catching up with Shelley Horton, who you might know from TV. She's been a presenter for many years. She has also opened her very own chapter of the Australian arm of the We Do Not Care Club and is the author of the book Your Peri Godmother. So we're chatting to her about our real-life experiences of perimenopause and what you can learn from, a couple of peri gals sitting down having a chinwag about it. We are also going to be sharing an episode of No Filter featuring the glorious, gorgeous, very talented and very smart Naomi Watts. She's been really open about her experience with perimenopause, and she does go into quite a bit of the shame and embarrassment that can come along with that, even though we absolutely shouldn't be. And then we're going to be back with a health check on a bunch of cancers that are impacting women significantly here in Australia. Sadly, bowel cancer is on the rise, and that's not just in older Aussie women, it's in younger women too. So we'll go from like bowel to breast and beyond. So if you've got any concerns about that, make sure you send us through some questions too. And of course, as we do every week, this is general advice.
Yep.
So if you have heard something here today that resonates with you, that you feel like you identify with, that might be happening to you, make sure you take those concerns to your own GP and get them to work out what's happening with you. Well, we'll catch you for your next appointment next time, Mariam.
Bye-bye.
Well is produced by me, Claire Murphy, senior producers Sasha Tannick and Sally Best, with audio production by Scott Stronach, video production by Julian Rosario, and social production by Ellie Moore.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.